Any questions, please? Yes?
With regards to the Ishmael.
If you come to the loudspeaker, please. Yes.
Oh, with regards to Hazrat Ishmael and Hazrat Mustafa, one Christian reading the Holy Quran said that the descendants of Isaac is given, but not the descendants of Ishmael. Now, the Christians
Descendants of Isaac.
Isaac is given and Hazrat Ishmael is not given, and they already don't believe that, or some of them don't believe that Hazrat Ishmael is blessed, his seed is blessed. So they cannot see that how Muhammad could be a prophet or could be the blessed seed. So is there any short answer to that? I spent quite a long time and still they were not convinced.
You know, the first most important principle to be kept in mind before answering such question is this, that the validity of the question has to be challenged to begin with. On common sense, on our knowledge of history, if this is acceptable, it might have been said in Bible, even if you don't debate that. I mean, even otherwise, it can be completely rejected as a valid question. If it is correct, what the Bible says, that only the chosen son of Abraham was Isaac, and the prophethood was to remain within the descendants of Isaac, then it would also be inferred that Allah was not the creator of the rest of the world. He left the entire world completely unattended, and He was the creator of only a certain people, and of that only a certain line. This is not acceptable to any human being normally, because the concept of God and the concept of His creation and the concept of prophethood, they all become so limited, and they don't mean anything for the rest of the world. So it has to be rejected outright, this question. Why should it be? If Allah is the owner and the creator of the universe, if it is for Him to decide every issue, then how can one impose it upon Him that He should create the prophethood from a certain lineage, and He should restrict the prophethood to certain descendants of a prophethood? You know, anything of that nature is putting a restriction upon Allah.
Yeah, but the thing is that if the Jews accepted Jesus as the Messiah, then possibly the Holy Prophet would have come from the Jews.
Why? This is what I am discussing. The Holy Quran has mentioned a retort to all questions of this nature, and that is the main principle to which one must take. The Holy Quran deals in one sweep of the hand with all the questions belonging to this category. It says, "Hum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbik." People from various walks of life, from various schools of thought, they come and make different demands. Some say that he should be the descendant, the new prophet should be the descendant of so and so. And some say that he should hail from that and that city. And some say he should be from that and that people and nation or religion. So the demands from all over the world vary and they are different. Then the issue is only this: who is going to decide whom Allah should give His blessings? Is it Allah or somebody else? If Allah is free to choose, let Him choose. Because it is not just their point of view. The fact is that the Holy Quran enlarges this question in the context of many other demands. There were Arabs who said he should have hailed from that city, that big city and that big city, the twin big cities. Like the Muslims today demand that the Mahdi should have come from the two big cities, Mecca and Medina. At that time when Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam appeared, the two big cities were not Mecca and Medina. They were two different cities. So the demands, if you further go out of Middle East and go to India, the demand there would be that the prophet or the final prophet or the final, let's say, manifestation of God was to appear from among the Brahmins. And the Buddhists would say the final blessings of Allah was to be shown to the descendants of Buddha, and so the descendants of Confucius, and so the descendants of Zoroaster. It goes on and on. So how can you handle each one of them without there being a central weapon of defense available to you, which would hit them all together and with the same severity? That central weapon has been mentioned in the Holy Quran, that the question of who is going to be chosen by Allah rests with Allah, and he will not be dictated to by human beings. So that solves the attack upon Islam from all sides. Secondly, from the biblical point of view, too, you should be well versed and you should be capable of defending the position of Islam. The fact is that Hazrat Ismail is mentioned in Bible as a blessed son, as revealed to Hazrat Ibrahim before his birth, and he is promised of unlimited bounties by Allah. And when you remember, it is said that when Abraham prayed for a son, and he was given the glad tidings of Isaac, you know what he said? He said, Tere Huzur, in Urdu, it says, Tere Huzur Ismail hi jeeta rahe. In your presence, it suffices me that Ishmael be given a long life. That particular verse of the Bible decides the issue, not only in this respect, in the respect of the question you have asked, but in other respects as well. They claim that Isaac was the first son. And if Isaac was the first son, how could Abraham reply after receiving the glad tidings about Isaac, that Tere Huzur Ismail hi jeeta rahe? Let Ismail, the long life of Ismail suffice to me, if you provide him with long life. That means Ismail was the firstborn. And as a firstborn, he was recognized as the first official representative of Abraham. If Hazrat Abraham had not looked at him as the true descendant and inheritor, he couldn't have said that. He should have shown great pleasure at the fact that although I was given a son before, but he having been born out of a lady, let's say, slave. Huh? Not concubine, haram. Concubine is haram. Born women. Well, exactly, that's right. Yes. I was thinking of this. Because they claim that because Ismail was born out of a bondwoman, so he could not inherit the blessings of a prophet. That is the first step they take in that direction. Now, we can counter that through this saying of Hazrat Ismail. If Hazrat Ibrahim was of this opinion, as the Christians would have us believe he was, then when the glad tidings of Isaac was given to him, he shouldn't have said that Ismail was quite enough for me. That is an additional blessing. Because Ismail, having been born of a bondwoman, could not have been enough for Abraham if he had not believed that he would inherit his blessings all right.
So there was a discontinuation from Ishmael to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa.
Yes.
But in the line of Isaac, there was a lot of prophets in the line of Isaac. So she was basing on actually the discontinuation from Ishmael to Muhammad. Whereas in the other line, there was
that's quite right. All right, that doesn't make any difference at all. The fact is that there is a continuity observable of source in the line of Isaac. But then at the time of Jesus Christ, he is abundant. And it was prophesied by other prophets as well, like Moses, that from among your brethren, Allah will raise a great prophet. So that shows there was one prophet to offset the weight of an entire line of prophets. He was to be so great. And he was to be born from among the brothers, not the cousins in fact, not the direct line of Isaac. And then also the parable of the vineyard, which has been mentioned in the New Testament, you know that parable. That is also very clear that someone else is going to come, and this time it is not going to be the son, but the father himself. That shows that relationship of Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him, to the rest of the prophets was like this. His coming was the coming of God himself. The coming of Jesus Christ was by the maximum extension of imagination, like the coming of a son. And this is what has been described in the parable very clearly. So it doesn't make any difference whether there is a long lineage of prophets before him or not. The question is, the weight which he carries is so great that compared to that, the rest of the prophets all put together don't carry that much weight. This is, in essence, which has been disclosed by Bible itself in so many places, in so many forms. So, I hope you follow. After a question is been asked from the men's side.
That has been found, as you just explained. But I want to know how Jesus actually became the descendant of Abraham. Because there's no proof from the Bible at all that he was descended from Abraham. So how is it possible for us to...
how is it possible for the Christians to prove that?
Well, that was my point. There is no way in the Bible to find out that Jesus was actually the descendant of Abraham. The genealogy starts from Joseph.
According to them, he was the descendant of Allah.
Yeah, that's right.
The plain truth is that.
That's why I just got this point.
Yes, please.
So, Sayyid Hashim Sahab yesterday mentioned that there was a plate put on the tomb of that he saw
that Isa is to be buried on the right hand side.
If at all he comes, because he was subject to Qudrat of the light of the Lord. I, by Allah's grace, visited, if I did Umrah, in 1971, and I did not notice that plate. I was hesitant to, probably I missed it.
I was noticing, there is no proof that it is not there.
No, I asked Arshad Baki Sahab, who had been living there, and he also did not notice that. Probably it has been proof. It has been proved now.
It can only become true when after this awareness that there is a possibility of a great hanging there, you go there again and then observe keenly. Then if you don't find the plate there, that could be taken as truth. But not otherwise. You may have missed so many things.
I asked Arshad Baki Sahab because Sayyid Hashim Sahab has recently they went there.
Quite right.
But at that time it was not there. My question is that it probably has been put now after 14
It is possible. It is possible.
And
But first of all, let us establish whether when you went there, you were wary enough to note everything that was there,
well, this
or maybe your attention was drawn entirely to the tomb of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and you couldn't see elsewhere.
Hazur, being an
That can happen.
being an Amdi, I would have noticed that. And also,
Had you known it.
yes,
Being an Ahmadi, you should have noticed it had you known it prior to your visit. Otherwise, being an Ahmadi, how could you notice everything?
I knew the history about me.
No, I agree.
Three people could be buried.
You know, you don't follow my point. I don't deny what you say. I say it is not a solid proof against it. It is possible. And in fact, when it was mentioned, I also thought that this plate might have been put on there after, during the last 2-3 years maybe. Because during the last 2-3 years, Ahmadis have been activated in Tabligh. And they have been demanding the Maulvis about the place, where is that place where you think he is going to be buried. So they might have mentioned it to some authorities there and they might have put, this is plausible, but it's not a proof as yet. We'll have to investigate. Please. Ready, please. Yes.
If a man prohibits his wife to observe Farda strictly and she wants sincerely to observe Farda, which commandment of Allah should she follow? The one that says observe Farda or the one that says obey your husband?
Obey your husband. Where is it said obey your husband against the will of Allah?
Well,
I haven't read it anywhere.
I have
you? Pardon?
I'm asking you.
First of all,
you know better.
First of all, tell me where it is mentioned. I never noticed this. All that I know about Atat is that when the obedience to Allah and prophets is on one hand and obedience to the ruler on the other, you forget about the ruler and obey the prophet and Allah. This has been very clearly mentioned. So Ulul Amr stands higher than husbands or other relatives whom you should obey normally. I refer to the verse of the Holy Quran, Atiullaha wa Atiur Rasula wa Ulil Amri minkum. Allah Ta'ala categorically tells you that you should obey Allah, His Prophet, and your ruler, the established government or the established sovereign. And then it says, وَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. If you disagree on something, then refer the matter to God and to the Holy Prophet, and where the Ulil Amr disagrees with Prophet or with Allah, you must not obey him, but obey the Prophet and Allah. So it is so clear that whenever two orders contradict each other, one from Allah and one from Ulil Amr, you are free there to refuse to obey to the order, you are free there to reject the orders of the authority. Another question comes, to what extent? Where it is obligatory to reject and where it is only a choice with you to reject. There are two different situations. Now in the beginning of Islam, the Muslims could not raise the cry of Allah Akbar. The slogan of Allah Akbar would not be raised audibly for the other people. And because there was oppression and people would not permit that. Now here is a situation where there was a contradiction between two orders. The order of the elders of Mecca and the order of Allah. But Huzur Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never defied that to the extent, or exhorted his people to defy that to the extent that should go to walk into the street and say Allah Akbar, it doesn't make any difference. But when it was said, they were forced to say, to desist from declaring La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, then they were told positively to disobey that order. So despite the fact that they were not bound by Allah to obey even in the first instance, but in the first instance, the order was of such a nature that it was not necessary for every Muslim to declare Allah Akbar in loud terms. They said Allah Akbar, they could say Allah Akbar even quietly. But to denounce the kalima, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, is quite a different thing. So there they were not permitted to do that. Whatever the extent of torture or threat from the opposition was, they were not permitted. So this is exactly why I told the Jamaat to desist from saying azan if they are ordered not to say that, not because we accept that right. Any Ahmadi has a right to say azan, and he may start doing it. But we don't forego the right. But as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at one stage desisted from saying Allah Akbar loudly, so if we do that, there is no harm. But I told all Ahmadis in Pakistan that even if you are slaughtered to the last man and child, you must not denounce the kalima La ilaha illallah because this is the sunnah. So there are places where you have the right to disobey. Whether that right is to be exerted or not, that is your choice. But there are places where you have a right to disobey and it is not your choice. You have to use that right. That distinction has to be made by the Imam or the Khalifa of the time, which order belongs to which category. Please, yes, after you. Yes.
In relation to this book, Pork Consumption and Human Disease.
Could you first introduce yourself, please?
Name Qureshi.
Name Qureshi from?
Good.
From Green Thread. You are an Ahmadi?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're not wearing any cap in the mosque or you're... So I thought perhaps you're not an Ahmadi. Please.
Yeah.
In future, when you go to a place, you should behave like the situation demands. And in places of worship, you should be respectful in the manner as has been manifestly told by the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. For example, when you go to a British court, you can't wear a cap. You won't defy that order, will you? Because their way of respect is this, that when you appear before the elders, you shouldn't wear caps. But in Islam, it's exactly the other way around. In the court of Allah, this is the highest court one can imagine. The Muslims are supposed to wear caps and come with headdresses. But perhaps you didn't know that, so in future, please, you can take note of that.
This book tries to relate the psychiatric problems of the Western society with the
Who
fact
has written that book?
it says psychiatric problems are increasing much faster in poor-keeping countries than non-poor-keeping countries. I mean,
Who is the author of this book?
Dr. S.
Doctor?
S. F.
Sayyid Farooq Ahmed from? I know that. Dr. Aftab's brother. Suhail's brother. Yes, please.
I'd like to know what religious grounds can such statements be made.
He has not made his statement on religious ground. He is a physician and he is speaking from the domain to which he belongs. From a medical expert's point of view, he is discussing this aspect. There are many Ahmadi doctors who have concentrated on this point in particular from their field. Why pork is forbidden? Now, there are two aspects, two angles from which we can study this question. Number one, there might be some influences of thought on human psychology which may not be known to man, but as long as you believe in the book in toto, you are not permitted to raise questions about every single item of that. Whether you understand or not, if you accept the book, you should follow every injunction, because the fundamental claim is that that book is revealed from Allah, by Allah, who is all-knowing, who is the creator of the universe, of every life on earth. So, on that presumption, those who believe, they must follow the injunctions whether they understand the philosophy or not. If their belief is wavering on the verge of belief and not to believe or not to believe, then perhaps these questions would be valid for them, and it would add to their decision-making power. If they are not convinced on the details of certain questions, they may decide that order could not be from Allah. But for every order, you do not have to give a satisfactory explanation in scientific terms. For example, some orders are of the nature of trial. If somebody is the proprietor, does he not enjoy the right to tell you what to do and what not to do? That is the fundamental question. What do you think about it? If you come to my house and I am the proprietor, will I permit you or must I permit you to use everything you like or no? Fundamentally, I have the right to tell you. So to establish the right of propriety, Allah has been telling, eat of everything except this. Eat that and not that. And this is the first lesson of the Bible, which says that Adam was told to eat of that tree and not to eat of that tree. So this is to establish the proprietary rights. This is why in every religion, the list of those things which are forbidden is not the same, and nor is it the same at every time. And the Holy Prophet of Islam was told in the Holy Quran the philosophy of right and wrong, and also it was told that we forbade certain things to Israelites as punishment. Even that is the philosophy. If you punish a child, sometimes you say, all right, no chocolate for you again. And you have every right to do that. But to deny that right to the Creator, to give His orders for anything He chooses, for any reason He chooses. So number one, this question is invalid. Why should God forbid a certain thing which He has created? He knows better. There may be so many reasons. If the reason has not been explained, we can only put forward conjectures. Now, if a conjecture is put forward by a certain doctor or some certain scholar, and it is not acceptable to you, then what? The point is, it was his conjecture. The Holy Quran didn't mention it in so many words. So whether his idea was right or wrong, it's neither here nor there.
Yeah, but a lot of these facts are made on hypotheses. They're not true facts. You can't actually relate them.
Even that I can't accept, because you say they are not true facts and he says they are true facts.
No, he doesn't say. See, that's what he thinks. He doesn't actually say they are true facts. He says a lot of them are based on.
And you say they are not true facts.
Well, he himself says they're not true facts. What I'm trying to say is, don't you think that a lot of Christian people who read these literature will laugh at it, because I've given this book to another.
This is what I've told you already. Even if they laugh at it, if they're sensible, they are just laughing at Dr. So-and-so's explanation, not at the injection itself. Because I would put forward a different explanation, because that explanation has not been given, no explanation has been given by the Quran. So if I consider that explanation to be the reason behind, and somebody doesn't believe it, he may laugh at me, he has every right. But still, he is not laughing at the injunction itself, because there could be other reasons. For example, the sun rises daily, and various explanations were put forward for the reality of the rise of sun at various stages in history. There are so many things happening simultaneously, and one may say this is the windfall and this is the effect. For example, in the morning, the birds begin to chirp and sing just before the sunrise. And if you make somebody maybe naive enough to say that the sun rises because the birds have begun to sing, and this phenomena has preceded the phenomena of the rise of sun. You may laugh at it, but you can't laugh at the fact that sun has risen. So it is just an effort to explain things, and previously there was another explanation too. Some said that the sun rises because sun is revolving around the earth, and it appeared to be quite valid at the time. But now when you look back, you laugh at it. Still you can't laugh at the fact that the sun rises. So if the orders are there without any explanation, if somebody has a right to laugh at some explanation put forward by somebody, but not at the order itself.
Yeah, don't you think that therefore it's damaging? Because
to your mind maybe, but how can you project yourself into the mind of every reader and say this is the reaction of every reader?
I'm not talking about every reader, I'm talking about the people I gave this form of literature to.
So write to him.
To students.
You write to him and tell him that your experience tells you that this explanation is not acceptable. So why do you put forward an explanation which instead of helping Islam is damaging the cause of Islam? This is what you want to say.
Yeah.
I agree. It's impossible. So you write to the author about it.
Assalamu alaikum.
You understand my point?
Yeah, but I was told that all the books go through you, so...
No.
all this literature has to be
Not at
written
all.
personally by you.
It's preposterous. Yes, please, the lady, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Well,
Nowadays, the majority of foodstuffs that are available, for example, biscuits, sweets, and processed foods, contain both animal and vegetable fat. Being doubtful of the exact type of
where
animal
is the
fat.
meeting? One meeting. Is he here today? No.
Being doubtful.
Who will help me understand this question, please? You have followed? Okay.
She seems to be saying that these days, when we have biscuits and other products, there are two kinds of oil.
Some with lard, some not with lard.
Some vegetable oil and some other.
Animal fat. So what's the question?
The question is that some foods contain both animal and vegetable fat, and being doubtful of the exact type of animal fat, should we purchase these items or strictly?
I'll explain that. If you know positively that lard is used, then you should resist from eating that food prepared with lard. But if you do not know, then you don't have to worry overmuch about this, because this was exactly what was taught and practiced by Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself. There used to come meat from various places, from the nomads, and people sometimes in Mecca doubted, the followers of the Holy Prophet, as to the meat being halal or haram, being rightly slaughtered in the Islamic way or not. And Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha tells us that Huzur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam rejected these doubts and suspicions and said, if you know something to be haram, resist from eating it. But don't imagine, you don't permit your fancy to take flight in every direction and doubt everything. Unless you know something to be wrong, what you can do is say Bismillah and you can eat that thing. So that is the conduct of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself. So if you know that lard is used, there is from it. If you don't know and you can have something positively without lard, prefer that. But otherwise, if you eat something of which you don't know positively that some haram thing has been used, it is not wrong. Only say Bismillah and that's quite enough. How is your nephew?
My younger brother.
I'm okay, sorry again. You know, your uncle, Hadatul Bandi, he has been writing about the nephew and you have been writing about the brother, so I confused the issue.
But the grace of Allah, Abdullah is now saying so my question is concerning the Holy Quran, Surah Saf, it says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min adhabin. And immediately, that is in this verse, God is addressing the believers. And immediately after that, God says, Tuminu billah, that is, do believe in Allah. Now once God is addressing the believers, then He is asking them to believe in Him. How does these two things, once knowing that they are the believers?
Those believers who were addressed, were they not doing the rest of the things already?
Yes, they were.
So, the lecture should be about every item of that what follows, not about Tuminuna alone.
No, the whole of the verse actually.
So the question changes the complexion altogether.
It does.
And it doesn't say do this. Tuminuna is muzariya. That means you are doing it. Hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min azabin alim tuminuna billahi. وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم. This is a statement of fact, not an order.
But is it in special circumstances? Is it referring to some other?
No. What it means is that Allah says that should I not make you aware of a situation that you have struck the best bargain, you have taken the best bargain, and that bargain is this. That you believe in Allah and you part with your money and part with your life, sacrifice your money and life for the sake of Allah. This is the best bargain you have made already. Alright.
The revelation of the promised Messiah, it says, Antal Masih Ulazi la yuzaw waqtahu.
Yes.
What is actually
Antal Shakul Masih Ulazi la yuzaw waqtahu.
What is the actual meaning of this particular revelation? How do we interpret it?
The meaning is obvious that you are the great Masih whose time is not wasted. That means that Hazrat Masih Maud put every second of his life available to him in the service of Allah. Yet he sometimes perhaps was worried about. Sometimes he would be lost. He was eating, he was sleeping as well. He was resting sometimes. He was talking to children. So something must have been lying heavy on him, which Allah about which Allah wanted him to be put to rest. So he said that although you have done everything in your power to sacrifice your time, every morsel of your time to my sake, yet I see you're not completely happy and content. You feel perhaps that a part thereof may have been wasted. But I know you and I tell you, this is a glad tidings from you, that as I see, not a single second of your life is wasted and everything is being put into the service of Allah. This is a reassurance from Allah, and that also tells a story, untold story, of what passed in the mind and heart of Hazrat Masih Maud before this revelation.
Why did Hazrat Ali do bad on Hazrat Abu Bakr for 6 months when he was elected?
Just a moment, first of all, let me relieve one of your sisters or some problem, मुकर्रम शहूर जावेद साहब फौरन घर चले जाएं, उनकी अहलिया घर के बाहर खड़ी है और चाबी अंदर रह गई. Now please continue with your question.
That was the question. Why did Hazrat Ali do bad on Hazrat Abu Bakr for 6 months when he was elected?
Didn't perform bad at the hands of Hazrat Abu Bakr. Yes, he was in doubt about it. This is why he did it. For a few months or for a few days, it is debatable how long he desist from doing that. But once Allah made it clear to him that he was the rightful caliph, he accepted. And that act of accepting him as caliph, after he had made it known that I am hesitant, that also showed the greatness of Hazrat Ali. He did not mind his self-respect to be injured in the eyes of others by changing that decision. And he ultimately accepted. So there are so many things, in fact, in the history of Islam about which we are not very sure. There are two schools telling us different stories. Some stories come from the Shiites, some from the Sunnites, and 1300 years have passed since. And lot of enmity is witnessed in various periods of history between these two factions. So the traditions relating to these differences are unreliable. And I should not rely too much on the traditions put forward by either of the two sections. The fact of history, which remains unaltered in this, that Allah ultimately chose Hazrat Ali to be the fourth caliph. If he had acted wrongly, consciously, in any manner, he could never have been chosen as the fourth successor of Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that absolves him of any aspersion which these traditions might have thrown upon him, which reach us. They might be true and they might be false. But the one fact remains clear and undebatable, that in Allah's eyes, he had not done anything wrong consciously. By mistake, there is no harm, he might have done something. Yes, please.
I'd like to ask, how is it that many of the Muslim jurists have come to the conclusion that apostasy is a capital crime, when we have examples even in the time of the Prophet people leaving Islam without having this capital punishment?
You know, the jurists in Islam belong to a period quite far removed from the time of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, for them it was very difficult to look at and compare every tradition which is available to us now, today, because the traditional books of tradition were collected and preserved after the institution of jurisprudence had taken shape. The jurists precede the time of those who collected traditions. So they had very meager resources available at their hands. Now people think as if all the books of Bukhari, the Sahih Sitta, everything was ready and prepared for them to compare and make their conclusions. It was not so. Some traditions reached verbally Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa and some Hazrat Imam Shafi and some others, and they had very little material to make their conclusions, and particularly where things differed, where the views differed, it was very difficult for them to make a comparative study of hadith, because hadith in that form was not ready, not available to them. So they drew some conclusions from history. And the history of the apostasy at the time of Hazrat Abu Bakr was the leading factor in misleading them. Because they could not analyze what was happening. And what they thought was that whoever said, "I am not Muslim," he was put to sword. It was not so. What actually happened was that there was a revolt against not only Islam but against the state of Islam, against an established order. Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq was not only a caliph, he was also the ruler of that state that had come into being and had fallen under the sway of Islam and had become also a Muslim state. So any defiance of a state is punishable to the extent that defiance is made. So the defiance made by those people was against the state of Islam, against the rule of Islam. And they had in fact attacked or were amassing armies to attack Medina before ever Hazrat Abu Bakr thought of fighting them. So from that, this inference that the punishment of apostasy is death is totally an erroneous and wrong inference. Later on, there were some other jurists who were so dishonest that whatever the king wanted them to say, they would say. And to such jurists of minor type, but still they were, played havoc with the life and property and honor of the Muslims. What happened was that a king of a certain regime wanted to put to death his opponents, and he would call the jurists of his own choice and would say, "Look here, this is their belief. Do you consider this is Islamic or un-Islamic?" They would say, "Obviously it's un-Islamic," because they would read the mind of the ruler. He said, "So what about the punishment of apostasy?" That, of course. So they were slaughtered mercilessly. Even they are known to have been dug out of their graves if they could not be slaughtered in their lifetime and hanged afterwards, after they had died many, many years before, and put to death for apostasy. So this was the medieval dark period of Islam, of which one can be only ashamed and can't be proud of. The brightest period, the most shining and dazzling period was the time of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There the punishment for apostasy was not, as you have mentioned yourself, death or killing in any form.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, please.
My question is, can we justify spying in Islam in order
Justify what?
to spying or intelligence?
Spying.
Yes, in Islam, in order to defend one's country. If it is so, why is the punishment of spies so severe?
Punishment of spying so severe?
Yes.
This punishment is not for those who spy for you, but it is for those who spy against you. I mean, it's a reciprocal system, a fight, and the spying in Islam is permitted during a war or a battle, during a national struggle. Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself employed it. And in the battles, both the sections, both the parties try to kill each other, and whoever succeeds kills. So this is why if some spy is caught from the enemy camp, he should be treated severely. If your spy is caught by the enemy camp, he is also treated severely. So this is a time of war, a life or death of nation, and the rules applicable there are quite different from the normal times of peace. Yes, please.
Hazur, I was reading one of Hazrat Mir Muhammad Ismail's books, that it is said that the Holy Prophet said that those who die in childhood neither go to heaven or hell, but are gathered in a place called Maidan-e-Hashr, and a prophet is sent to them there, and those who accept the prophet will go to heaven. And can you please expand on this?
No, this is not what is mentioned there. The fact is that it is said that those are the children who die young, in infancy, or in the age where they are considered innocent by the law, they would be raised again, of course, but they have not been given opportunity to develop morally and spiritually, because their life finished, they died before the training period that begins after the adulthood, where you are put to trial, you are ordered to do certain things, and if you do it on volition, you are naturally rewarded by Allah. If you intentionally disobey Allah, you are punished by Allah. This is a process of development of soul. They didn't pass through that process. So how would their souls develop after being reborn, given a new life after that? That is the question. And it is explained by Anna sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they will be brought up under the training of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. He would be in charge of the training system for such children to bring them up to the mark where they can have an independent existence in soul, in spirit, and they can make up for the loss of training in this world. This is what he said, not as you have understood. Please, question?
This evening, I was watching TV, and on the TV it was songs of praise. There was a lady, a black Christian, who they believe in being very merry in the church and being very joyful in singing songs. And many of their reverends believe that God has spoken to them, and he says that this should happen in church. And yet other people, such as yourself, have witnessed God, and he doesn't tell you to do these sort of things. Why is this?
Because either of us is wrong.
Well, if you
of course
misunderstood it.
Please sit down. Either misunderstood or is indulging in falsehood, obviously and consciously. You know, once when I went to America in 1978, I was told by an American that the president of Mormons had declared that he was revealed by Allah, it was revealed to him by Allah, that from then on the blacks could also be given the office of ministry in the church. And because of that, he permitted the blacks to be taken in church as ministers. Previous to that, the Mormons wouldn't permit that, previous to this. Now he told me that according to the general principle, will that man be punished? Because obviously he is telling a lie. Allah wouldn't have told him anything like that. So I said I can't answer this question on this generality. So there are so many factors involved. You can't say somebody is a liar just by listening to something which may not have happened. People have different frames of mind. People have different psychic conditions. People have some mental diseases as well. So unless you know the man, you can't judge. And so I can't judge about these people as you have mentioned.
Yeah,
they may be mistaken, they may be wrong, they may be diseased. But when I told this to him, I said I would love to see the prophet of the Mormons, the president, as it is called by the outsiders, but the Mormons call him the prophet. So it so happened that on the same session, in the same session, a group of Mormons came where we were holding these discussions. and it was headed by a cardinal of the Mormons. Along with him there were quite a few students who were on a training mission. He took them along for preaching and he was training them. So we had a very nice discussion there. And after that, this Mormon cardinal was so happy and pleased with me that he suggested himself that if you would like to visit our president, I can arrange that. I am well connected. So this is exactly what I wanted. So I told him, of course, and he did arrange that. And I met the president, who was about 85 years of age at that time. So when I met him, I put him this question, straightforward. I said, it is said about you that Allah had revealed to you before your decision was taken that blacks can be taken in the ministry. He said, yes. I said, how did Allah speak? Please tell me. He said, you know what happened was that for one full week, I prayed to Allah, to God. And after that, I was fully satisfied that this is the right decision. This is what we call revelation. So the concept of revelation varies from man to man. And it may not be the same term used by somebody else as we use it. For example, Gandhi also used the term revelation, but for a different meaning, for instinct, for intuition, let's say. He used the term revelation. So we don't know unless we meet these people and know what sort of people they are and what are their impressions, we can't judge on generality.
What about people like the Pope? Do you think God speaks to people like the Pope?
He never claims.
Oh, he doesn't claim that, but he says he has dreams from God.
Dreams, everybody can see and can receive dreams from God. That is another phenomenon. You must remember, if you had read Hazrat Naseem of the Rassal's books, you would be very clear on this aspect. It is not a monopoly of a Muslim or a righteous man to be revealed something from Allah. Even an atheist sometimes gets a revelation from Allah. And even the non-believers, the infidels, the idolaters see good and true dreams. So number one, make it very clear in your mind that it is not the monopoly of any particular religion or faith to be in contact with Allah. The fact is that it is for Allah to decide, but as far as general principle is concerned, that we can say positively, that if somebody is shown a dream by Allah, for some goodness he knows within him, and he comes and challenges those who are on the right path while he is on the wrong path, and makes it as presents it as a sign of Allah being on his side and not on the side of others. At the time of such a challenge, Allah will positively desert his cause and will take up sides with those whom he considers to be on the right path. So the general phenomena of revelation is not to be misunderstood. The fact is that if Allah had not manifested himself in so many ways to mankind as such, nobody would have believed in Allah anymore. It is these incidents spread out all over the world, here and there, appearing and reappearing, which keep the faith in Allah alive in every denomination of religion. So this is a different phenomenon altogether. But Hazrat Naseem of the Rassalatu has made it very clear that when, as a people, you are on the right path, this phenomena is not sporadic or a rare phenomenon. It becomes a constant feature of the life of every participant. So, among Ahmadis, this phenomena is far more abundant, much more to be evidenced. And when an Ahmadi speaks dream, the dreams of an Ahmadi from, for example, Sheikhupura in Pakistan, sometimes carries fantastically, exactly, with a dream seen by an Ahmadi in Spain or a dream seen in an Ahmadi by an Ahmadi in England. And when they write to me, then I put two and two together. And daily I receive sometimes 100 dreams and sometimes a bit less or more. And I'm in a position to judge that phenomena. And I can positively claim that this cannot happen anywhere else in the world. Because the internal evidence is so strong that no people on earth can claim that. Sorry, just a minute. Let me finish first. Now, the Christians outnumber us by very great margin. They are more than an Arab or 100 crore or say 1,000 million, 1,000 million? 1,000 million. And we claim to be just 10 million. Huh? 10 million. 1 crore is 10 million. Now, if it were just a phenomena of chance, then the evidence of true dreams in the Christian world should have been at least 1 lakh times more evident than the phenomena of dreams in the Ahmadiyya community. While it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, isn't it funny how the dreams always tend to relate to your own religion, to reinforce your own religion rather than...
No, they don't.
What? I mean, the Pope uses his dreams and he says...
No, they don't tend to do that at all. This is completely mistaken. The dreams that Ahmadis see and write mostly belong to the future events, not to any religion at all. To future events, not only to future events, but they depict and predict Allah's special help in circumstances which are completely out of human control. So this is the type of dream which I quote as a dream from Allah. Not just the psychological happenings which do occur every day, and sometimes some people see dreams by hundreds in a day. There was a gentleman, now he's in Nigeria. He was a fellow student in me. He was so quick in seeing dreams that during the summer sessions in the class, he would doze off, for a second. And immediately he came to, he said, I've seen a dream. And that dream was much longer than the time that for this. So that man literally saw, if not 100, at least scores of dreams. So that phenomena is never mistaken by an Ahmadi to be a phenomena, a revelation from Allah at all. I mean, we are sensible people. We diagnose things, we analyze things, and when we say something, that can be put as a challenge to an atheist as well. Once in Spain, while we were discussing this question in an assembly of the chosen elite people of that area where the mosque is built, one of them asked me this question. I said, I will give you instances of Ahmadi's dreams before ever they thought of my predecessor to have died. They could never think of it. But from all over the world, they saw dreams alive and in such language as it cannot be interpreted otherwise. And even those who didn't know me, they saw me in the dream to be the next caliph. And the language was so symbolic and was repeated in such a manner in other places that one dream was supported by the dream of another Ahmadi. So because many examples were fresh in my mind, I quoted a few examples.